Chapter 21, Lamps, 1939. Herr Schneider had had his broken apartment door mended. He had had to pay for everything himself, even for the ruined rose bushes in Herr Rush's front garden that had suffered from having drawers emptied on top of them. I rang the bell. Shuffling footsteps came closer. Herr Schneider peered out at me through a crack. When he recognized me, he listened a moment, opened the door, and pulled me inside. He didn't say hello until he had locked the door again. I only wanted to deliver this letter, which got mixed in with ours by mistake, I said. Herr Schneider nodded. His hands trembled as he took the letter from me. The hands were dirty. Herr Schneider saw me looking at them and rubbed them on the flowered apron he wore. His thank you was barely audible. We stood in the hall, vacillating. Herr Schneider looked at his letter, but didn't open it. I wanted to leave. Is Friedrich not at home? I inquired. He's working, answered Herr Schneider and pointed to the kitchen. With tired steps, he led the way and pushed me inside. He still carried the letter in his hand. The kitchen looked like a lamp shop. Lamps stood, hung everywhere, the dirty, bent, broken ones to one side, and the shining, straight ones that looked like new on the other. In their midst sat Friedrich. Before him on the kitchen table, handy and in orderly fashion, were arranged rolls of wire, glue pot, paint, cleaning stuff, bulbs of different voltage. He had stuck several screwdrivers, pliers, and knives into the front pocket of his apron. What are you doing? I asked stupidly. Mending lamps, as you can see. Friedrich smiled. Herr Schneider sat down at the table and with a polishing cloth began to clean one of the rusted lamps. While I talked to Friedrich, he sat bent on his stool and didn't once look up from his work. Since my father isn't allowed to work anymore, Friedrich explained, I just have to provide for both of us. Father collects old lamps from friends, and we mend them. I still looked around me in amazement. In a few moments, Friedrich took apart a standing lamp. Expertly, he tested the cable, examined the connection, tightened a little screw, put everything back together again, screwed in a new bulb, tested the lamp by switching it on, nodded contentedly, and set it aside. He handed a wall lamp he just cleaned back to his father. This must be polished some more, he said pleasantly. Our customers expect good work, he explained, turning to me. If someone isn't satisfied, he won't recommend us, and the more lamps we get, the better off we are. After a pause, he asked, Don't you know anyone we could do work for? We work cheaply. I'll ask around, I promised. I didn't like it in the cold kitchen. It was so empty. Herr Schneider and Friedrich also seemed different. I didn't know this Friedrich at all. I was leaving when I stepped on the letter. It was still unopened. Herr Schneider, your letter. I reminded him and handed it to him. Give it to me, Friedrich demanded, and since Herr Schneider didn't reach for the letter, I let Friedrich take it. He tore open the envelope. With dirty fingers, he pulled the letter out and read it. Suddenly, his face changed. With eyes large and helpless, he stared at his father. He sounded desperate when he said, Herr Rush has given us notice. Herr Schneider stood up. He pulled Friedrich's head toward him and stroked his hair. It's hard, boy, he consoled, but don't worry. He can't do it until he can prove he has another apartment for us to move into. The 14-year-old Friedrich sat at a kitchen table and cried like a small child. Herr Schneider took me by the shoulder and accompanied me to the door. He shook my hand. I was already on the stairs when Herr Schneider crept after me. Visit us again soon, he whispered. And then, in an even softer voice, he pleaded, Don't give us away. Otherwise, they'll take even the little we have left.